With jury selection underway Thursday, voting machine company Smartmatic settled its defamation lawsuit against Newsmax over false claims of election fraud. The details of the settlement were kept private, with Newsmax saying it's pleased to announce it has resolved the litigation, and Smartmatic stating lying to the American people has consequences. Smartmatic will not stop until the perpetrators are held accountable. The last-minute settlement avoids a trial destined to become a public spectacle. The company says Newsmax knowingly aired false news of Smartmatic trying to swing the 2020 election in Joe Biden's favor and spread lies about the company's role in the election.
Let's start. Adam is here. There is a scene playing out in a Miami federal courtroom right now that reads like something from a political thriller, except every word of it is real. Every filing is public, and the implications reach straight into the White House. A voting technology company that spent years being accused by Donald Trump and his allies of stealing the 2020 election is now facing criminal charges from Donald Trump's own Justice Department.
Two men with links to the poll automation firm Smartmatic surrendered to U.S. federal authorities to face bribery charges involving a former Philippine elections chief. Our North America Bureau Chief TJ Manotoc has tonight's top story.
The founder and a former executive of Smartmatic have surrendered to federal authorities in Miami, Florida this week. They face serious allegations of bribery related to securing contracts for the Philippines' 2016 elections. Smartmatic founder Roger Piñate and former Vice President George Miguel Vasquez are accused of paying over $1 million in bribes to former head of the Philippine Election Commission, Andres Bautista, to win a $199 million contract. Court documents show Piñate has been released on an $8.5 million bond, while Vasquez pleaded not guilty and was released on a $1 million bond.
The same company that sued Fox News and Rudy Giuliani for nearly $3 billion over the lies that destroyed its business. The same company that cooperated with federal investigators for years, handed over millions of pages of documents, made countless presentations to federal agents, did everything a company is supposed to do when the government comes calling. That company, Smartmatic, is now standing in federal court arguing that the criminal charges against its UK parent company are not legitimate law enforcement.
Now for the latest on those outstanding defamation cases against Rudy Giuliani, attorney Sidney Powell, and Fox News. Two voting machine companies are suing, saying they were defamed by unsubstantiated claims that they contributed to widespread fraud in the 2020 presidential election. Roger, good to see you. This is definitely a good read. You actually call this the mother of all defamation cases. Tell us why you're saying that.
Well, thank you, Alexis. I don't know of another instance in which so many media outlets have amplified over such a sustained period of time such inherently implausible assertions that were so manifestly damaging to the reputations of identified businesses and individuals.
They are retaliation. They are revenge. They are the administration using the machinery of federal prosecution to punish a company for having the audacity to sue Trump's allies for lying about them. This case on its own is explosive, but it is not happening in a vacuum. It connects to a pattern of DOJ conduct that a federal judge documented in a published ruling just days ago. It connects to a proposed rule from Attorney General Pam Bondi that would shield DOJ lawyers from state ethics investigations. It connects to the more than 100 career prosecutors who have resigned since Trump took office, citing political interference and pressure to drop cases involving Trump's allies. This is the story of what a weaponized Justice Department actually looks like in practice, not as a political talking point, as a documented legal reality playing out in federal courtrooms right now. Let me set the scene on the Smartmatic case because the details are genuinely extraordinary. Smartmatic is a voting technology firm founded by Venezuelan entrepreneurs who built their early business running elections while Hugo Chavez was in power. The company eventually expanded globally, providing voting machines and election technology to help run elections in 25 countries from Argentina to Zambia. Then came the 2020 election. Trump lost. His allies went on television, on Fox News, on One America News, on Newsmax, and made sweeping claims that voting machines had been manipulated to steal the election. Smartmatic was named repeatedly. The claims were false. No credible evidence of Smartmatic involvement in any fraud was ever produced. Multiple courts rejected fraud claims. Election officials across the country, Republicans and Democrats alike, certified the results. But Smartmatic watched its business collapse anyway. The company says its revenue tanked because Fox News and others gave Trump's lawyers a platform to destroy their reputation with claims that were never true. So Smartmatic sued, a $2.7 billion defamation suit against Fox News and others. And according to Smartmatic's lawyers, that lawsuit put them squarely in the crosshairs for retribution. A company sues Trump's allies for lying about them and ends up criminally indicted by Trump's Justice Department. That is the story. Let me walk you through the full picture, what the charges actually say, what Smartmatic says is really happening, why this matters legally, and how it connects to the broader DOJ weaponization pattern. The criminal charges themselves stem from a case that predates Trump's return to office. Federal prosecutors in Miami have been investigating Smartmatic's co-founder and several other executives over allegations of bribery related to contracts in the Philippines. Specifically, prosecutors alleged that between 2015 and 2018, the company paid approximately $1 million in bribes to Philippine election officials to secure a contract to help run that country's 2016 presidential election. The individuals have pleaded not guilty. A trial date had been set for the original defendants. Smartmatic as a whole believed it had cooperated sufficiently with prosecutors and was in the clear. That is the legal backdrop. And it is important to understand that the underlying bribery allegations are real and pending before a court. This is not a case where Trump invented charges out of thin air against a completely innocent company. There are real allegations about real conduct in the Philippines, but that is precisely what makes Smartmatic's motion to dismiss so legally significant and so revealing about how this administration operates. Here is what Smartmatic's lawyers argue happened. When Trump returned to the White House, the Justice Department reversed course on the case. Where prosecutors had previously been proceeding against individual executives only, the Trump DOJ added Smartmatic's UK parent company to the indictment. This happened after years of cooperation, after millions of pages of documents produced to federal agents, after formal presentations to the government, after the company believed based on the trajectory of the investigation that it had resolved its exposure. And the company's lawyers say the decision to add the parent company was not driven by new evidence or a genuine law enforcement reassessment. It was driven by Trump's long-standing claim that Smartmatic helped rig the 2020 election and his administration's practice of using the DOJ to punish companies and individuals that his allies blame for his electoral losses. Smartmatic's filing in Miami federal court states directly, the prosecution furthers their collective false narrative that President Trump did not actually lose the 2020 election. That is a company saying in a federal court filing that the criminal charges against it are designed not to achieve justice, but to validate a lie about the election. That is not a minor allegation. That is an extraordinary claim about the fundamental integrity of a federal prosecution. Smartmatic's lawyers also drew an explicit comparison to another case that illustrates the same pattern. A Salvadoran migrant was criminally charged for conduct years after the events in question, after he successfully sued the Trump administration over his deportation. The administration charged him after he won his lawsuit. Smartmatic's lawyers are saying the same logic applies to their client. You sue us, we prosecute you. You hold us accountable, we hold you criminally liable. That is the argument. And it echoes directly what a federal judge found and documented in his ruling on the Powell subpoenas just 2 days ago. That being perceived as the president's adversary had become legally risky in Trump's second term, and that the DOJ had been listening to Trump's demands to prosecute his perceived enemies. That ruling and this Smartmatic filing, submitted days apart, together tell a coherent story about how the Justice Department is being operated right now. Now let's talk about the DOJ ethics rule because this one flew under most people's radar, but it is deeply significant for understanding how the administration is trying to insulate itself from accountability going forward. Attorney General Pam Bondi signed a proposed rule that would give the Justice Department the right to review misconduct allegations against current and former DOJ attorneys before state bar associations can investigate them. Here is how it would work. When a third party files an ethics complaint with a state bar against a DOJ lawyer, the Attorney General could claim the right to conduct the initial review and ask the bar to pause its investigation while that review is ongoing. The Attorney General could, by dragging out that review, effectively stall any state ethics investigation indefinitely. And the proposal warns that the DOJ will take appropriate action against any state bar that refuses to pause its investigation, which critics read as a direct threat to sue state regulators into compliance. Think about what this means in practice. Right now, across multiple states, there are ethics complaints pending against DOJ lawyers who were involved in the immigration contempt cases, the Powell prosecution, and other politically charged enforcement actions. In Florida alone, more than 70 lawyers and former judges, including 2 former Florida Supreme Court justices, have asked the Florida bar to investigate Attorney General Bondi herself for allegedly pressuring DOJ lawyers to violate their ethical obligations. The Florida bar has declined to open a case while she remains in office. But under the proposed rule, even if Bondi left office, the DOJ could claim the right to review any bar complaints about her conduct and pause state proceedings before they gain traction. This is the Justice Department proposing to police itself. The same institution that a federal judge found had launched a pretextual prosecution with zero evidence of a crime, proposing to be the first and primary reviewer of ethics complaints against its own lawyers. The cop that systematically dismantled its own internal accountability systems is now proposing to take control of external accountability systems too. The broader context of DOJ transformation under this administration is documented in detail across multiple credible sources. More than 100 career prosecutors and DOJ lawyers have resigned since Trump took office, an exodus far exceeding normal turnover between administrations. Many cited political interference, pressure to drop cases involving Trump's allies, and threats of retaliation for refusing unethical orders. According to major investigations, Trump appointed an ally to lead a weaponization working group at the DOJ tasked with scrutinizing law enforcement officials who had previously investigated him. He publicly posted demanding that Bondi prosecute his enemies, writing on social media that they are all guilty as hell, but nothing is being done. That post has become Exhibit A in accusations that Trump is undermining DOJ independence. The cases against prominent critics, both indicted after Trump demanded their prosecution, both pleading not guilty and accusing the DOJ of vindictive prosecution, represent the most high-profile examples. The Smartmatic case represents the same pattern applied to a corporate entity that had the audacity to sue Trump's media allies for defamation, and the ethics rule represents the administration's attempt to close the last remaining external accountability mechanism for the lawyers executing all of this. The connection between the Smartmatic case and the 2020 election narrative is also worth understanding fully because it is not just about one company's prosecution. It is about the administration's ongoing effort to retroactively validate the claims that lost courts, lost audits, and lost election certification challenges could not validate. Trump has maintained since November 2020 that he did not actually lose the election. He has maintained it through 2 impeachments, through a federal indictment, through a historic felony conviction, through his return to office. And now his Justice Department is pursuing a criminal prosecution of a voting technology company whose machines were never credibly linked to any fraud. A prosecution that Smartmatic argues in federal court is specifically designed to advance the narrative that they did steal the election. After all, if the charges stand, if the parent company is convicted, Trump's allies will point to it as vindication, as proof that there was something to the claims all along. The prosecution is not just retaliation. It is a tool for rewriting the history of 2020, and that is why Smartmatic's lawyers are fighting it with everything they have. Let me pull all of this together. The core points, what the Smartmatic case and the DOJ ethics rule tell us about the administration's approach to law enforcement, and why this matters beyond the individual cases. The Smartmatic case is the clearest documented example yet of what a retribution prosecution looks like from the inside. The company cooperated with investigators for years, produced millions of pages of documents, made formal presentations to the government, believed it was in the clear, and then, after suing Trump's media allies for billions, found itself added to a criminal indictment under a DOJ run by Trump's appointees. Smartmatic's lawyers are not arguing the underlying bribery allegations are false. They are arguing the timing, the targeting, and the motivation behind adding the company specifically to the indictment reflects political retaliation rather than legitimate law enforcement judgment. That argument, if accepted by the federal judge in Miami, would result in the charges being dismissed as a vindictive prosecution. Vindictive prosecution is a recognized legal doctrine. Courts have dismissed charges before when defendants can show that the decision to prosecute was driven by retaliation for the defendant's exercise of a legal right, like, say, filing a multi-billion-dollar defamation lawsuit. The motion to dismiss is pending. The outcome is uncertain, but the motion itself, on the public record citing specific facts and legal arguments, is one of the most direct challenges to DOJ politicization that any defendant has ever brought in a federal court. The ethics rule is an attempt to remove the last external check on DOJ lawyer conduct, and its implications are enormous. State bar associations are independent professional organizations that operate outside the federal government's control. When a DOJ lawyer violates ethical rules, lying to a court, hiding evidence, following improper political directives, state bar complaints are one of the primary mechanisms by which that misconduct can be investigated and sanctioned. The proposed rule would effectively put the Justice Department between state bars and the lawyers they are trying to investigate. It would let the Attorney General, the same official being complained about in some of these cases, decide whether the complaint is worth looking at before the bar can proceed. It would allow indefinite delays through the review process, and it would threaten state bars with legal action if they refuse to comply. The administration has already systematically dismantled the DOJ's internal accountability systems. This rule is the attempt to dismantle the external ones. The only remaining accountability mechanisms for DOJ lawyers are the federal courts themselves, and we have already seen the administration's approach to court accountability in the contempt proceedings across the country. The pattern documented across these cases is the same pattern a federal judge named explicitly in the Powell ruling, and it is now confirmed across multiple simultaneous contexts. That judge wrote that being perceived as the president's adversary had become legally risky in Trump's second term. He documented that the DOJ had launched an investigation with zero evidence of a crime other than displeasing the president. He cited the cases against prominent critics as part of the same pattern. Now add Smartmatic, a company that sued Trump's allies, to that list. Add the immigration lawyers who were held in contempt and threatened with criminal sanctions for following their clients' instructions. Add the ethics complaints against Bondi herself for allegedly pressuring lawyers to violate their obligations. The pattern is not a political attack line from Democrats. It is documented across federal court opinions, published journalism from credible organizations, and now formal court filings by corporate defendants arguing that their prosecutions are retaliatory. The paper trail is extensive, it is growing, and it will be part of the historical record of this administration regardless of how individual cases are ultimately resolved. The midterm and political implications of this DOJ pattern are real and building in ways the administration may not have fully anticipated. Here is the political dynamic that makes the Smartmatic case particularly interesting. The company is suing Trump's media allies for billions in a defamation case that is still active. If Smartmatic can get the criminal charges dismissed as vindictive prosecution, the dismissal ruling becomes additional evidence in the defamation case of the administration's motive to harm the company. The two cases feed each other. Every development in the criminal case potentially affects the civil case. and the broader DOJ weaponization narrative, now documented in the Powell ruling, in the Smartmatic court filing, in the ethics rule proposal, and in the accounts of more than 100 career prosecutors who resigned citing political interference, feeds directly into the political environment heading into the midterms. Every Republican member of Congress who has to defend this DOJ record to voters in competitive districts is defending a record that a federal judge described as pretextual harassment with zero evidence of a crime. That is not a comfortable position heading into an election cycle where the president is already at record low approval with record economic disapproval in an unpopular war. The DOJ retribution campaign that Trump promised his base is turning into a political liability that his party is going to have to carry through November, whether they want to or not. Here is the full picture of what the Smartmatic case and the DOJ ethics rule tell us about where we are right now. A voting technology company is in federal court, arguing its criminal indictment is political retaliation for suing Trump's allies. The argument is grounded in specific documented facts about the timeline of the prosecution and the DOJ's stated motivations. The same legal framework that a federal judge used to dismiss the Powell subpoenas applies directly to Smartmatic's vindictive prosecution argument. The DOJ is simultaneously proposing a rule that would shield its own lawyers from the state ethics investigations that are the primary external check on their conduct. More than 100 career prosecutors have resigned, citing political interference, and a federal judge using the president's own social media posts as evidence has already published a formal finding that the DOJ launched an investigation with zero evidence of a crime other than displeasing the president. This is the documented reality of the Trump Justice Department right now, not a political attack, a paper trail. We are going to keep tracking every development right here. Subscribe, hit the bell, join the free newsletter in the description because this story is moving in federal courtrooms every single day, and you deserve to know what is actually happening. I will see you in the next one.